They were spared execution in the woods, but their blood feud isn't over. It has only just begun. Now, a massive arena has been built. Two armies led by warrior kings have arrived to settle the score. It's Palamon versus Arcite. The gods have taken sides. Who will survive to win the Lady Emily? Now, I'd be negligent if I forgot to tell you about the sheer amount of money Duke Theseus spent to get ready for this tournament. He busied himself making the lists, the battleground royally. And honestly, there wasn't a theater in the entire world as noble as this one. It was a massive circuit, a full mile around, walled with stone and surrounded by a ditch. It was round like a compass and lined with degrees, rows of seats 60 paces high. The design was perfect. If you sat on one level, you didn't block the view of the person behind you. Eastward there was a gate of white marble. Westward, right opposite, was another just like it. Shortly put, there was never a place built like this on earth in such a little time. There wasn't a craftsman in the land who knew geometry or arithmetic, or a painter or carver, that Theseus didn't hire. He gave them food and wages just to build and design this theater. And to perform his rites and sacrifices, he built 3 temples right into the structure. Above the east gate, in worship of Venus, the goddess of love, he built an altar and an oratory. Above the west gate, in memory of Mars, he made another one that cost a wagon-load of gold. And northward, in a turret on the wall, he built a rich oratory of alabaster and red coral in worship of Diana, the goddess of chastity. But I almost forgot to describe the noble carvings and the paintings inside these 3 oratories. First, in the Temple of Venus, you could see the whole history of love painted on the walls. It was pitiful to behold. The broken sleep, the cold sighs, the sacred tears, and the lamenting. The fiery strokes of desire that love's servants endure in this life. You saw pleasure and hope, desire, foolhardiness, beauty, youth, flattery, and jealousy, who wore a garland of yellow marigolds and had a cuckoo sitting on her hand. There were feasts, instruments, dances, and all the circumstances of love. The whole mountain of Cithaeron, where Venus dwells, was painted there. They didn't forget the porter idleness, or Narcissus from the old days, or the folly of King Solomon, or the great strength of Hercules. It showed that neither wisdom, nor riches, nor beauty, nor strength can compete with Venus. She guides the world however she pleases. All these people were caught in her snare, crying, alas! The statue of Venus herself was glorious to see. She was naked, floating in the large sea, covered from the waist down by green waves as bright as glass. She had a musical instrument in her right hand and a fresh, sweet-smelling rose garland on her head. Above her doves were flickering. Before her stood her son Cupid. He had 2 wings on his shoulders, and he was blind, as he is often depicted. He carried a bow and bright keen arrows. Now, why shouldn't I tell you about the temple of mighty Mars the Red? The walls were painted like the inside of the terrible temple of Mars in Thrace, that cold, frosty region where the god has his main mansion. It was a forest with no people or beasts, just old, knotty, barren trees with sharp stumps, hideous to look at. You could almost hear a rumble and a wind shaking the boughs. Downward from a hill under a slope stood the temple of Mars Armipotent. It was made of burnished steel. The entry was long, narrow, and ghastly. The door was made of eternal adamant, clenched crossways and lengthways with tough iron. Every pillar was as thick as a barrel, made of bright iron. There I saw dark imaginings of felony and plotting. Cruel anger red as a live coal, the pickpocket and the pale dread. The smiler with the knife under his cloak, the stable burning with black smoke. Treason and murder in bed, open war with bloody wounds. Inside the temple, there was Mischief sitting with a sorry face. I saw Madness laughing in his rage, armed complaint and fierce outrage. I saw the corpse in the bush with its throat cut, 1,000 slain, not by sickness but by tyrants. The town destroyed with nothing left. I saw the ships burning, the hunter strangled by wild bears. The sow eating the child right in the cradle, the cook scalded by his own ladle. Nothing was forgotten, the carter overridden by his own cart, lying low under the wheel. And high up in a tower, I saw Conquest sitting in great honor, with a sharp sword hanging over his head by a single, thin thread. The statue of Mars stood on a chariot, armed and looking grim, like he was mad. A wolf stood before him at his feet, with red eyes, eating a man. It was painted with a subtle brush to show the fear and glory of Mars. Now, let's hurry to the temple of chaste Diana. The walls were painted with stories of hunting and shamefaced chastity. I saw Callisto, who Diana turned into a bear because she was aggrieved with her, and who later became the North Star. I saw Daphne turned into a tree, not the goddess Diana but the daughter of Peneus. I saw Actaeon turned into a stag because he saw Diana naked. His own hounds caught him and ate him because they didn't recognize him. The goddess herself sat high on a stag, with small hounds around her feet. Underneath her feet was a moon. It was waxing but would wane soon. Her statue was clothed in gaudy green, with a bow in hand and arrows in a quiver. Her eyes were cast low, looking down to where Pluto has his dark region. So the lists were made and the temples were ready. Theseus was wonderfully pleased, but let's stop talking about Theseus for a moment and speak of Palamon and Arcite. The day of their return approached. They were each bringing 100 knights to decide the battle. And true to their word, they arrived in Athens. Honestly, many people believe that since the world began, over land and sea, there had never been such a noble company of so few men. Everyone who loved chivalry and wanted a name for themselves prayed to be part of this game. It was a pleasure to see. Palamon arrived with his knights. Some were armed in breastplates and short doublets, some in large plate armor, some with Prussian shields. Some had axes, some had maces of steel. With Palamon came Lycurgus himself, the great king of Thrace. Black was his beard and manly was his face. The circles of his eyes glowed between yellow and red. He looked around like a griffin, with combed hair on his thick brows. His limbs were huge, his muscles hard and strong. He stood high on a chariot of gold, drawn by 4 white bulls. Instead of a coat of arms, he wore a coal-black bear skin, old and tough, with yellow claws as bright as gold. His long hair was combed behind his back, shining like a raven's feather. A wreath of gold, as thick as a man's arm, sat on his head, full of bright rubies and diamonds. Around his chariot ran 20 or more white hunting dogs, as big as steers, ready to hunt lion or bear, wearing collars of gold. With Arcite came the great Emetreus, the king of India. He rode a bay horse trapped in steel and covered in cloth of gold. He rode like the god of war, Mars himself. His coat of armor was made of silk from Tarsus, trimmed with big round pearls. His saddle was beaten gold. A short mantle hung on his shoulders, brimming with rubies that sparkled like fire. His curly hair ran in rings, yellow and glittering like the sun. His nose was high, his eyes bright citrine. His lips were round, his color was blood red. He had a few freckles on his face, mixed between yellow and black. He looked around like a lion. I reckon he was about 25 years old. His beard was just beginning to spring. His voice was like a thundering trumpet. Upon his head he wore a fresh green laurel garland. And on his hand, for his delight, he carried a tame eagle, white as a lily. About this king on every side ran many a tame lion and leopard. So on Sunday, about 9 in the morning, these lords all arrived in the city. Theseus lodged them, each according to his rank, and feasted them. He worked so hard to make them comfortable that people thought no human wit could improve on it. The music, the service, the gift, the rich array of the palace. I won't list every detail. I won't tell you who sat first or last, or which lady was fairest or danced best. Let's get to the point. Sunday night before daybreak, Palamon heard the lark sing. Although it was 2 hours before dawn, he rose with a holy heart and high courage to go on his pilgrimage to the blissful, benign Venus. He walked to the lists to her temple and kneeled down. With a sore heart he said, "Fairest of fair, O Lady Venus, have pity on my bitter tears and take my humble prayer to your heart. I don't have the language to tell you the torment of my hell. I am so confused I cannot speak, but mercy, Lady Bright, you know my thought. Consider this and take pity on my pain. I promise to be your true servant forever and make war on chastity. I don't care about boasting of arms or winning the victory tomorrow. I don't want the glory or the renown. I only want the full possession of Emily and to die in her service. Find the manner how. I don't care if it's better that I defeat them or they defeat me, so long as I have my lady in my arms. Mars is the god of arms, but your power is so great in heaven that if you wish it, I shall have my love. And if you will not do this, my lady sweet, then I pray that tomorrow Arcite's spear runs me through the heart. I don't care if I lose my life, as long as Arcite doesn't win her as his wife. Give me my love, you blissful lady dear." When Palamon finished his prayer and sacrifice, the statue of Venus shook and made a sign. Although it signaled a delay, Palamon knew his boon was granted. He went home with a glad heart. About 3 hours later, the sun rose and up rose Emily. She hurried to the temple of Diana. Her maidens took the incense, the cloves, and the horns full of mead. Emily washed her body with water from a well. Her bright hair was combed and untressed. She wore a coronet of green oak on her head. She kindled 2 fires on the altar and spoke to Diana with a pitiful expression. "O chaste goddess of the green woods, to whom heaven, earth, and sea are seen. Goddess of maiden, you have known my heart for many years. You know I desire to be a maiden all my life. I never want to be a lover or a wife. I am yet of your company, a maid who loves hunting and walking in the wild woods. Now help me, lady. This Palamon and this Arcite love me so sorely. I pray you, send love and peace between them. Turn their hearts away from me. Quench their hot love and desire, or turn it to another place. But if you will not do me this grace, or if my destiny is shaped so that I must have one of the two, then send me the one who desires me the most." While Emily prayed, the fires burned clearly on the altar. But suddenly she saw a strange sight. One of the fires went out and then revived again. Then the other fire went out completely, making a whistling sound like a wet brand burning. At the ends of the sticks, it looked like bloody drops were running out. Emily was so aghast she was well nigh mad. She began to cry, not knowing what it meant. Then Diana appeared with bow in hand, just like a huntress. She said, "Daughter, stop your heaviness. Among the high gods it is affirmed and confirmed that you shall be wedded to one of those who have so much care and woe for you. But unto which of them I cannot tell. Farewell. The fires on my altar have declared your adventure of love." With that, the arrows in her quiver clattered and rang, and she vanished. Emily was astonished and said, "What does this amount to?" "Alas, I put myself under your protection, Diana," and she went home the nearest way. The next hour was the hour of Mars. Arcite walked to the temple of fierce Mars to do his sacrifice. With a pious heart he said his prayer. O strong God, who holds the bridle of arms in your hand in every land and gives fortune as you please, accept my pitiful sacrifice. If my youth deserves it and my might is worthy to serve your Godhead, then I pray you, pity my anguish. Think of the pain you felt when you burned with desire for Venus. You know the sorrow. Have pity on my pain as well. I am young and ignorant, and I believe I am offended by love more than any creature alive. She causes me all this woe, and doesn't care if I sink or swim. I know I must win her with strength in the arena. And I know, without your help, my strength is nothing. Help me, Lord, tomorrow in my battle. Give me the victory. Mine be the work, but all yours be the glory. I will honor your temple above all others. I will hang my banner in my arms there. I will keep eternal fire burning before you. I bind myself to this vow. My beard and my long hair, which have never felt a razor or shears, I will cut off and give to you. Just give me the victory, I ask no more. When Arcite finished, the rings on the temple door clattered and the doors shook. Arcite was somewhat afraid. The fires flared up so bright they lit the whole temple. A sweet smell rose from the ground. Arcite threw more incense into the fire. At last the statue of Mars began to ring his hauberk, his coat of mail. And with that sound Arcite heard a murmuring, low and dim, that said, "Victory." Arcite gave honor to Mars and went back to his inn as happy as a bird in the bright sun. So now, right immediately, a strife began in heaven above. Venus and Mars were arguing about who granted what. It got so bad that Jupiter was busy trying to stop it. Finally, pale Saturn, the cold planet who knew so many old adventures, found a way to please both sides. Age has a great advantage. It has wisdom and experience. Saturn said, "My dear daughter Venus, my orbit is wide and powerful. Mine is the drowning in the wan sea. Mine is the prison in the dark cell. The strangling and hanging, the grumbling and the poisoning. I do vengeance. I ruin high halls and make walls fall on carpenters. I slew Samson by shaking the pillar, now weep no more. I will make sure that Palamon, your own knight, shall have his lady as you promised. But Mars shall also help his knight. There must be peace between you two. I am your grandfather, ready at your will. Weep no more, I shall fulfill your pleasure. So now I will stop speaking of the gods above, and tell you plainly what happened next, and the great effect for which I began this story. The council of the gods is finished, and pale Saturn has woven a plan to please both Mars and Venus. But what of the men of earth? The sun rises on the great theater of Athens, and the time for prayers is past. Join us for the final chapter to witness the clashing of steel, the cruelty of fate, and the final judgment of love. Who shall bleed and who shall wed? The tournament awaits.